This book explores the art of thinking clearly by identifying and avoiding common thinking traps that affect our daily decisions. Rather than focusing on what we should do to achieve success and happiness, the approach here suggests examining what we should avoid. This method, inspired by how Michelangelo created his famous statue of David by removing everything that was not the sculpture, helps us eliminate harmful thoughts and behaviors to think more clearly and act more intelligently. The following chapters examine various cognitive biases and mental traps that hinder both individual and collective thinking. Chapter: An unconventional tour. One valuable exercise involves visiting a different kind of cemetery. Not the traditional resting places we might expect, but rather the graveyards where failed projects, investments, and once promising careers lie buried. This practice helps us understand and overcome survivorship bias, a cognitive error that creates a distorted view of reality where success appears more common than it actually is, while failures are conveniently forgotten or hidden from view. Survivorship bias leads us to overestimate the likelihood of success because we primarily see and remember the winners. We forget about the countless projects that failed despite following the same strategies and applying the same factors that successful ventures used. When we examine these failures, we discover that life does not follow a predetermined script for success. Both successful and failed endeavors often employed similar approaches, revealing that outcomes depend on many factors beyond our control. By acknowledging this cemetery of failures, we can deactivate survivorship bias and develop a more realistic understanding of success and failure. Chapter: Wearing the T-shirt. Human beings have a deep-seated tendency to identify with groups, whether they are sports teams, companies, or nations. This characteristic stems from our evolutionary history, where survival depended on group cooperation over thousands of years. While this instinct served us well in the past, it now creates several problematic effects in modern society. Group identification leads to in-group and out-group biases that distort our perception of other groups and foster prejudice. When we strongly identify with a group, we tend to support its ideas and values excessively, even when they may not be rational or beneficial. This blind loyalty can override our capacity for independent thinking and objective evaluation. Although group identification was once essential for survival, it now often distorts our view of facts and leads to irrational behavior. To combat this tendency, we must critically examine our own beliefs and behaviors related to the groups we belong to. When we disagree with a group's objectives or methods, we need the courage to question them and, if necessary, distance ourselves from the group. Chapter: Challenge your convictions. Regardless of what we believe, we can always find seemingly reasonable justifications to defend our positions. This occurs because of confirmation bias, our tendency to seek information and experiences that support our existing worldview. The danger lies in being unaware of this bias. While we may feel uncomfortable when our beliefs are challenged, we often fail to actively question them ourselves. Overcoming confirmation bias requires conscious effort to confront our deeply held assumptions and actively search for evidence that contradicts our preferred theories. This process of examining and potentially abandoning our favorite ideas can be difficult, but it is essential for personal growth and the pursuit of truth. Only by honestly confronting our own assumptions can we develop deeper understanding and a more authentic perspective on the world around us. Chapter: Unmasking a charlatan. Generic statements such as "you often doubt your own decisions" can seem remarkably accurate to many people, even though they apply broadly to almost everyone. This phenomenon, known as the Forer effect, occurs because people tend to accept vague descriptions that seem to match their self-image, even when these descriptions are deliberately nonspecific. The Forer effect explains why pseudosciences and fortune-telling can appear so convincing. People naturally identify personal characteristics in generic descriptions, believing these vague statements reveal special insight about them specifically. To protect ourselves from charlatans who exploit this effect, we must question any claims made about us and critically analyze whether statements are genuinely specific or simply generic enough to apply to virtually anyone. Chapter: Be suspicious. The confidence we place in our own knowledge and abilities frequently exceeds what reality supports, demonstrating the overconfidence effect. This psychological phenomenon does not distinguish between accurate and inaccurate estimates, but rather between what we actually know and what we merely believe we know. Experts are particularly vulnerable to overconfidence, often showing disproportionate certainty in their predictions even when they prove incorrect. Surprisingly, specialists can make as many or more errors than non-experts in their fields. This reality makes it crucial to maintain healthy skepticism regarding predictions and expert opinions. To counter overconfidence, we should adopt cautious approaches and consider pessimistic scenarios in our planning, enabling more realistic assessments of situations and outcomes. Chapter: The compliance trap, social proof, suggests that we tend to believe ideas are correct simply because large numbers of people endorse them. This tendency, rooted in our evolutionary past, once served as a useful survival strategy when following the crowd often led to safety. However, in modern contexts where group behavior may not offer advantages, we continue to follow this outdated pattern. The truth is that an idea's correctness has no necessary connection to how many people support it. Popularity may indicate social acceptance but not intellectual or moral virtue. To avoid falling into this trap, we must resist conformity pressure and evaluate ideas critically based on their merits, regardless of how widely accepted they may be. Chapter: Too many tasks, taking on excessive tasks, and creating overly ambitious plans represents a common trap known as the planning fallacy, which cognitive psychology has extensively studied. This phenomenon occurs for several reasons, with two primary causes standing out. First, we often suffer from self-delusion, believing we can accomplish everything we set out to do. Second, we focus too intensively on our own projects while neglecting external influences that could affect outcomes. This narrow focus blinds us to potential obstacles and complications. To avoid the planning fallacy, we need to shift attention from internal factors to external ones. Instead of concentrating solely on our own project details, we should examine similar past projects, analyze their success rates, and study the resources they required. This external perspective provides more realistic understanding of our own capabilities and limitations. Chapter: The Ghost of the Past. Making decisions in uncertain situations is an unavoidable part of life. The sunk cost fallacy, where we cling to past investments as justification for continuing failed endeavors, represents a particularly dangerous trap. Money, time, or effort already invested should not influence our future decisions, yet we often allow these past costs to cloud our judgment. Our desire for consistency can lead us to persist with projects destined for failure simply to avoid the psychological discomfort of admitting we were wrong. Rational thinking requires that we ignore past costs and focus instead on present circumstances and future prospects. Only by releasing ourselves from the ghost of past investments can we make sound decisions moving forward. Chapter: Whose never self-attribution bias causes us to credit our successes to our own abilities while blaming our failures on external factors beyond our control. This tendency helps maintain positive self-image, but can be dangerous in a world where risks are often unclear and poorly defined. When we consistently attribute success to ourselves, we risk becoming complacent and underestimating future challenges. To address self-attribution bias, we need honest, objective feedback from people close to us. Friends who can speak truth directly, or even personal enemies, can offer valuable perspectives that counterbalance our tendency towards self-serving explanations. Frank conversations with these individuals can provide important insights and help us avoid the pitfalls created by this bias. Chapter: Don't die of envy. Envy emerges from comparing ourselves to others, particularly regarding material possessions, status, talents, or achievements. However, such comparisons are often unfair and unrealistic, since each person follows their own unique life journey with distinct circumstances. To control envy, we must stop comparing ourselves to others and focus instead on developing our own skills and talents. Finding our area of competence and concentrating on becoming excellent in our chosen field makes us less susceptible to envious feelings. Ultimately, envy provides no significant benefits and typically only distracts us from our own happiness. By focusing on building meaningful lives for ourselves, we can overcome envy and find greater personal satisfaction. Chapter: Effortful. Effort justification is a psychological phenomenon where we tend to overvalue results from tasks requiring significant time and energy investment. This represents a special form of cognitive dissonance, where we rationalize the effort we invested in activities even when results prove disappointing. For example, people who endure difficult initiation rites often value group membership more highly afterward, even when actual rewards are minimal. This occurs because our minds seek to justify the effort we expended. To avoid this trap, we must step back and evaluate results objectively, separating the genuine value of activities from the effort we dedicated to them. Chapter: Clarity and Simplicity. Faced with a choice between remaining silent when we have nothing meaningful to say versus talking extensively to hide shallow thinking, the better option becomes clear. The tendency to use excessive words to disguise underdeveloped ideas represents a common communication problem, and more eloquent speakers often fall into this trap more easily. Clear communication reflects clear thinking. Well-developed ideas can be expressed directly and concisely, while ambiguous thoughts hide behind empty rambling. We must recognize that simplicity in communication is not a starting point, but rather the result of clear, refined thinking. Following Mark Twain's wisdom, it is better to remain silent when we lack meaningful content rather than losing ourselves in empty speeches. Chapter: Burning Bridges. As human beings, we tend to keep all options open, fearing we might miss future opportunities. However, this approach can prevent success by scattering our resources and energy across multiple directions. The reason behind this irrational behavior lies in our difficulty immediately perceiving its negative consequences. While keeping all options available may seem advantageous, it often leads to lack of focus and reduced effectiveness. The strategy of deliberately burning bridges suggests a more radical approach, consciously identifying and discarding options that are not essential to our goals. Just as business strategy defines where companies will not operate, we must make deliberate choices about what to eliminate from our lives. By adopting this mindset, we save time and energy by avoiding the constant need to evaluate every possibility. Instead of trying to open every door that appears, we should prioritize and focus only on those aligned with our goals and values. Chapter: Attention to Alerts. When someone warns that the path ahead will be difficult, our internal alarm systems naturally activate. However, we must distinguish between legitimate predictions and manipulation behind the "it will get worse before it gets better" fallacy. Insecure experts often use this fallacy to justify their predictions. If conditions worsen, their prediction appears confirmed. If conditions improve, clients feel satisfied, allowing experts to claim credit for the improvement. In either scenario, the expert appears correct. We must exercise careful judgment in these situations. While some circumstances genuinely do get worse before improving, we should monitor progress closely and watch for clear signs of success or failure. Critical moments are identifiable and manageable, and we should focus our attention on these rather than getting lost in unsubstantiated pessimistic predictions. Chapter: Less is more. Having freedom to choose represents an important virtue, but constantly seeking more options can negatively impact our quality of life, as demonstrated by the paradox of choice. Too many options can lead to decision paralysis, reduced decision quality, and increased dissatisfaction as the search for perfect choices becomes a source of worry and anxiety. To manage this challenge, we should reflect on our needs and preferences before encountering numerous options. Establishing clear, realistic selection criteria and accepting that perfection is unattainable helps us make decisions that satisfactorily meet our needs without becoming overwhelmed by endless possibilities. Chapter: The Invisible Danger. In group dynamics, a particularly dangerous phenomenon occurs when individual performance becomes so diluted that it becomes invisible, almost always resulting in decreased personal effort. This is known as social loafing. Social loafing represents a form of often unconscious deception where individuals invest less effort when their personal contributions are not highlighted or measured. This has implications for group decision-making, leading to tendencies toward greater risk-taking compared to individual choices. This shift toward risk demonstrates how collective discussions significantly influence individual behavior. To reduce social loafing's negative effects and promote meritocracy and personal performance, we must make individual contributions visible, encouraging more effective cultures of responsibility and collaboration. Chapter: The Part for the Whole. When we perceive someone as attractive, their physical beauty often overshadows other characteristics, creating an overall positive impression. This can result in benefits where beauty becomes associated with competence. Similarly, other characteristics such as social status or age can influence how we perceive someone's skills and abilities. This phenomenon, known as the halo effect, represents our tendency to be impressed by a single outstanding aspect. It influences our perceptions of individuals and organizations in disproportionate ways. The halo effect can also have negative consequences, especially when characteristics like origin, gender, or race become dominant and obscure other qualities, leading us to create stereotypes and underestimate people's true abilities and merits. Recognizing the halo effect in our own perceptions and decisions is extremely important. Evaluating people based on their genuine qualities can help overcome the distorted results of this effect and promote fairer, more accurate assessments of others' skills and competencies. Final summary: the human brain evolved in environments vastly different from our modern world. Previously, we lived in small groups with minimal social or technological change. Today, our environment is far more complex and interconnected, leading to new types of problems and cognitive errors. This disparity between our biological development and current circumstances results in frequent judgment lapses. Despite this challenge, our brains are not designed to seek truth, but rather to ensure survival and reproduction. In many situations, intuition can be more efficient because trusting our instincts saves mental energy and avoids unnecessary fatigue. However, for significant decisions, adopting rational and careful approaches is crucial. An effective strategy involves knowing the areas where we are naturally proficient. Within this circle of competence, intuition can safely guide our choices. Outside this circle, we should rely on rational and systematic thinking. Adopting these practices can minimize our errors while optimizing our decision-making ability in an increasingly complex world. Therefore, instead of endlessly pursuing success and happiness, focusing on avoiding mistakes may provide a more realistic and efficient approach to achieving a balanced life.